This is the most ruthless roast in comedy history.
And Steve-O, this new, subdued, not drunk you, it stinks, man. I love Mike Tyson, and I don't have much to say. I'm just disappointed and hurt at how much comfort white people have around you now. I don't like it.
Throughout history, there have been a plethora of comedy roasts to take place for many different celebrities. Most recently from people like Tom Brady, spanning all the way back to Richard Pryor decades ago. The common objective at most of these roasts is to be as mean as possible while still being funny. But most of the time, the jokes are nothing more than shocking lines written for entertainment, because a lot of the people performing at the roasts are usually friends with the person being roasted or with each other. However, there was one time a comedian went up and brought the meanest roasts he could possibly think of, totally off the cuff, and did what I consider to be the meanest roast of all time. That comedian was Patrice O'Neal at the roast of Charlie Sheen. Many other comedians would go on to praise this performance after the fact, and it would end up being one of the last times we as the audience got to see Patrice O'Neal in action doing what he does best. If you're wondering how it was that Patrice O'Neal brought the heat to the roast, how he prepared for it, and the other details surrounding the roast of Charlie Sheen, then you've come to the right place. I will be discussing all of that in today's video, so without further ado, let's hop right into it and get down to the nitty-gritty details. To begin with, the roast format in comedy is a very unique one because it is an outlet of comedy that requires comedians to write jokes about people for a special occasion that will only be used that one time. Early on, people realized that comedians, given their craft being so writing heavy, would often deliver some of the most clever and silver-tongued roasts that had ever been said. This would often lead to several different comedians consistently being on the roast rosters at all of the Comedy Central roasts, such as Jeff Ross, Anthony Jeselnik, Greg Giraldo, and several more. However, despite these three being prolific roasters and regulars on the Comedy Central roast lineups, none of them would ever hold a candle to the most ruthless roaster to ever grace the stage at Comedy Central, Patrice O'Neal. Patrice would end up being on the roast of Charlie Sheen that took place on September 19, 2011, just 10 years and 8 days after that tragedy where all the stories came crashing down. The esteemed roast master would be Seth MacFarlane, and alongside him would be Anthony Jeselnik, John Lovitz, Jeff Ross, Amy Schumer, William Shatner, Steve-O, Mike Tyson, and Kate Walsh. Patrice was initially not on the roster, but he would end up being called very last minute, just 3 days before the roast was set to be filmed in Los Angeles, California, and he would really only end up having time to prepare his material on the plane ride over to California. Patrice also talked about how there was actually a lot of pressure on him given the fact that he wasn't very well known in Hollywood at the time. He actually talks about this on the Opie and Anthony radio show that took place right after the roast had aired. Check it out.
This was I had to prove myself.
Yeah.
I'm used to being able to just chill and work out my mind, and I had to prove myself. And now, okay, I did well, but it was like, oh yeah, that's what he does. But if I bombed, so I had to actually muster up all my experience as a comic.
Jesus.
So I had to play for the room. I had to, because and they got mad at me, the truck, because it was, hey, you know, you got AIDS.
Even though Patrice had some planned material, he ultimately knew he had to be a comic and wing it to really stand on business at this roast. The entire reason Patrice accepted this roast invitation to begin with, because he had rejected 3 or 4 other ones before, was because he really wanted to meet celebrity Charlie Sheen, because he really respected him standing up for what he believed in. So this was the perfect opportunity for Patrice to finally meet Charlie Sheen, and also to show the world of entertainment what a dominant force of comedy he really was. There's a lot more amazing details about this roast we will discuss after the fact, but for now let's talk about the roast itself by Patrice. I will show you a few of my favorite parts of Patrice's roast because it is absolutely hilarious and beyond amazing. To begin with, he attacks William Shatner right off rip.
Like, I didn't know William Shatner was gonna be quasi, like, an old racist man, like, but everybody's giggling like, whoa, you're a asshole, Captain Kirk.
What are you talking about?
Like, I don't respect him, but I'll respect him, because he's Captain Kirk. But I think he might be racist because his hair plugs look like black girls' hair.
What an absolutely amazing line to start off the roast with. Patrice went right for the throat with this line towards William Shatner, and then right after this, he goes for Anthony Jeselnik. While Anthony Jeselnik is one of my favorite comedians working today, I do believe that Patrice has the greatest roast ever delivered towards him.
Like, I wasn't gonna be mean to Anthony. I don't know him. I never met him. So I'm sitting here watching him, and I'm like, he has way too much confidence. In my world, he's an open micer. Nobody knows him, and nobody should. Like, nobody should know Anthony. I refuse to learn his last shitty name. I learned Galifianakis. That's the last shitty last name this gonna learn in this funky town. He reminds me of a medieval restaurant waiter. Like, his old demeanor, like, hello, may I welcome to, and you just wanna go, shut the up and bring me my giant turkey leg, you nothing.
Absolutely fantastic. A few more parts that really stood out to me were his jokes about Mike Tyson and also Jeff Ross. The Mike Tyson joke may be my favorite of the entire roast because we get to hear Mike interject initially and then get served with a hilarious joke right after the fact. Check this out.
I love Mike Tyson, and I don't have much to say. As a fan of Mike Tyson, I love him, and I don't mean, I love
You.
I'm just disappointed and hurt at how much comfort white people have around you now. I don't like it.
Phenomenal. Absolutely love it. Then this joke about Jeff Ross, I absolutely love too.
Jeff Ross, I love you, I guess. Jeff Ross is a legend. His funniness is a legend. But when I say legend, I mean a myth. Like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot. Like, we all believe they exist, but who really ever saw it?
Then finally, Patrice would get to Charlie Sheen and make several jokes about him that everybody would find hilarious. But then after that, he did something unexpected that nobody saw coming. Patrice would then take several moments to tell Charlie how much he respects and admires him for standing up for what he believed was wrong.
But I want to say to your eyes, man, I love that you stood up to what you thought was wrong, and I'm impressed by you, and I just wanted to say that. So, thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
We don't often hear moments where Patrice O'Neal is genuinely kind to somebody, so this threw everybody off, but it ended up being an incredibly wholesome moment from one man to another. If you haven't seen the clip of Patrice on Opie and Anthony talking about the entertainment industry being the beast, you would know that what he said to Charlie Sheen was 100% genuine. He actually breaks down the entertainment industry on a molecular level, and he name drops Charlie Sheen specifically as someone he truly admires in show business. I'll show you the clip I'm referring to.
This business is the beast. Now you see, ooh, that looks like a delicious young thing there. Eat, chew. But that's why I love Charlie Sheen so much. He was in the belly. When you're making $2 million a week doing anything, you're in the absolute belly. And for that fucker to betray his position in the belly, to actually give the beast indigestion was spectacular. He was a martyr.
This was why Patrice thought so highly of Charlie, all roasts aside. I also feel the need to point out one additional moment from the roast that seemed insignificant at the time, but it would end up being an extremely sad warning of what was to come to our beloved big fat guy we all cherished so dearly.
How the can I be too mean after all this shit? I can't believe it. I'm dying of diabetes, and you motherfuckers are like, oh, that evil fat you know.
More on this later. If you want to watch the full roast, I highly encourage you to do so because there are even more jokes that are absolutely fantastic and hilarious. This roast is my second favorite roast, only behind Norm Macdonald's roast at the roast of Bob Saget. What I thought was brilliant about these two roasts in particular was they were both executed at the highest level possible despite being the complete opposite in nature. When I tell people about Norm's roast of Bob Saget, I always put it like this. Norm told jokes without being mean. And when I tell people about Patrice O'Neal at the roast of Charlie Sheen, I always say Patrice was mean without telling jokes. For a few of the roasts you just watched, you probably realized very quickly that he didn't know a lot of the people he was roasting or working with, so he wasn't really joking at all. He simply expressed his honest thoughts on these people in a humorous manner, but Norm never said anything mean in any of his jokes. This is where the contrast comes in. Speaking of which, Norm Macdonald would go on the record to say Patrice O'Neal on the roast of Charlie Sheen was the best example of a Comedy Central roast he had ever seen. I'll let the man speak for himself.
I love Patrice on that, though. Because I love Patrice.
Yeah, he's great.
And he did it. I never saw a guy that did the roast so good. Because he didn't do all that.
If nothing else was said about Patrice O'Neal, this would be enough for me to deeply appreciate the roast that he did and acknowledge that it was truly something special. Norm would often be very honest about how he felt. That much is evident from his time judging on the show Last Comic Standing. One thing's for sure though, when he gives you a compliment, that should be worn as a badge of honor because Norm does not say things like this unless he truly meant them. It's truly a shame that we never got to hear Norm Macdonald and Patrice O'Neal on the Opie and Anthony radio show at the same time, maybe in another universe. Now that I've shown you parts of the roast, I'll give you more insider information directly from the horse's mouth. On the Opie and Anthony radio show, Patrice actually shares a moment that was cut out between him and Jeff Ross, when Jeff Ross told a joke about sickle cell, and then Patrice responded with a joke of his own that was hilarious, and both of these would end up getting cut out by Comedy Central. I'll show you this part now so you can hear the jokes.
Jeff Ross said a fucking funny joke. He says to me, Patrice, you said you'll never do one of these roasts. You're a sickle sellout.
That's hilarious.
Hilarious. So when I was up, I was like, Jesus, I hope you get Tay-Sachs disease, right? Which is a Jew disease. Yeah. So, and Crohn's. And then, but it was a great ad-lib because I go, I hope you get Crohn's disease so it can stop some of that shit from coming out your mouth. Because Crohn's. So we had a good time. Cut that shit out. All that shit got cut out.
Are they afraid of disease people calling?
A very funny story off the air that will only live on through Opie and Anthony's radio show. The fact that Patrice's roast was only 6 or 7 minutes total, but he said he was up there for well over 12 minutes on stage, makes me very upset that so much good stuff was probably left on the cutting room floor. I wish we could all see what it was that was cut from Patrice's set because it was probably marvelous to watch. I'd recommend listening to the full Opie and Anthony radio segment if you want to hear Patrice go in really deep on how the roast affected him and how he prepared for it. Then sadly, just 1 month after the roast aired on Comedy Central, Patrice would be rushed to the hospital to have a blood clot removed from his head. This would be the last time Patrice was ever able to speak, and then a little over a month later after this, he would die of complications from a stroke in the hospital. The timing could not be more terrible. Patrice had just proved to the world of show business that he was absolutely worth the risk at the roast of Charlie Sheen, and then just a month later, he would be taken from us, and we could never really see how big his impact truly could have been. The performance Patrice gave was beyond legendary, but it was bittersweet because none of us realized that it would be the very last performance we would ever see Patrice give on television before his untimely demise. It seemed like he was speaking from the future when he announced he was dying from diabetes on the roast, but it would end up ringing true in just 1 short month. This roast and Norm Macdonald's roast of Bob Saget to me ring as the greatest examples of a comedy roast that could ever be done at the highest possible level of execution. And I'm happy we got to see Patrice O'Neal on at least one Comedy Central roast before he died. Anyway, what did you think about the Patrice O'Neal roast of Charlie Sheen? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was overrated? Do you wish that we would have gotten to see all of Patrice's jokes without them being cut out? Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. I also have a video on the roast of Bob Saget that Norm gave if you want to learn more about that one, and also the recent Tom Brady roast if you'd like to hear my thoughts on that. If you liked the video, make sure to give me a thumbs up, and if you're new, you can subscribe to the channel. I also have some bonus behind the scenes content on my Patreon, but all in all, this was the most ruthless roast in comedy history.
The magic of this song, Creep. It's, when I heard it, I'm like, oh, it's a good song. And then I seen videos, and it's mesmerizing to white people. They start floating.